Okay. Welcome to the Planning Commission meeting on this Thursday, March 31st. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Seconded.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Okay. You want to call the roll?
Okay. Commissioner Bates,
Present.
Commissioner Bennett, Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Knopp,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
and Chair Johnson.
Yes. Okay. Are there any amendments to the findings for the consideration adoption of findings for AA 22-01 from the March 24th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting? Are there any amendments to the findings?
Yes.
I have, yeah, go ahead, Lisa.
I'd
Go ahead.
I don't, okay, I guess I'm very confused here, Jeff. These don't look like findings and conclusions to me. They look like I'm making a case for, they look like you're making a case for your decision to me. I thought the findings and conclusions were supposed to be what the Planning Commission decided based on the evidence before us, not a long rendition of what the history of the case was, et cetera. That's the findings and conclusions that I'm used to seeing in my experience. So I'm finding, unless I'm just different land use, I find this just to be a long, and I also don't think that there's nothing in here about whether we decided it was 2 stories. And there is something that we decided it wasn't detached, that the majority of the commission decided the building wasn't detached.
And so can I just, well, traditionally how findings are, my understanding of findings and how I've always done them is that unless, and that's why I mentioned this when I bring up the tentative nature of things and ask for you guys, if you have certain sections of the proposed findings from whether it's the applicant or the appellant or whoever, if you would like those sections referred to or inserted, that's what you would suggest we utilize those. So as I thought you guys might want, so what I do is I take my staff report, which is written as if it's a proposed findings, unless you guys suggest other findings. In other words, you see that the appellant's argument or the applicant's argument was persuasive in this manner. And so then you would say number of stories. And so I'm going to share my screen, okay?
Yeah.
So for instance, I thought that although you guys didn't really, state that, I thought you might lean towards the number of stories. And so what I've done, if this highlighted area, let me read this to you, okay? This is taken from what I think is Exhibit A3. And so this was the proposed findings from the appellant. And so number of stories, the submitted and approved building plans for the detached 2-story garage show 2 distinct areas, 1 an upper space for parking 2 vehicles and 2 a lower space that is substantially above grade, in particular the lower space. The measures 8 foot 8 inch in height between the average grade and the finished surface, the floor area, the parking area above for more than 50% of the total area of the lower space. 2 appears to measure greater than 12 feet above finished ground level at its lowest point, exact measurement not shown. As staff points out, the CBMC does not define story. However, the Planning Commission acknowledges applicable definitions from 2 different code in effect sources, both of which confirm this lower space qualifies as a story, makes this a prohibited 2-story detached garage in the following manner. And so then I write the story above grade that was included in their definition. Because the height of the lower area between the average grade and finished surface of the floor of the parking area above measures over 6 feet for more than 50% of the total area, and finished floor of the parking area appears to be measured more than 12 feet above the finished ground at the tallest point, the Planning Commission finds the lower area of the proposed attached garage qualifies as a story and a story above grade plane. B, is the garage detached? But just as condition 16 turns on story as a term, it also turns on detached. Detached is another term which is not defined in the CVMC, but referred to in many instances. The building official has traditionally regarded a building to be attached when the garage or attached structures shall share a load-bearing wall, and I've included or enough structurally dependent components such as the truss, footing, or roofing systems as to be considered attached. The applicant has provided an alternative set of plans, Exhibit C5, showing an attached garage as described above. The Planning Commission finds the appellant's argument to not allow detached two-story garages persuasive as defined in this code, and yet, as the Cannon Beach Building Official has stated, the garage depicted in C5 is attached. The Planning Commission denies the appeal based on modification of the approval conditioned upon the attachment of the garage as depicted in Exhibit C5, satisfying condition 16. So I think that is what I'm saying. So, we take that proposed language from the appellant. We put that with the findings from the staff report that reflects your all's discussion, and that would combine into it. So then we would keep.
Can I interject for a minute? I
Sure.
don't have the highlighted portion of
Right.
what you have on your
I don't
screen. I don't
either.
have that, so I couldn't review it.
Yeah,
Neither-
exactly, because you have all of these materials, but they're in the proposed findings. I said, unless, that's why, I guess that is why when I ask for you guys, when you start your deliberations, to please refer to what language you would like, included in there.
Jeff, can I interrupt for just a second? I'd like to take just a quick step back for Anna and Mike's benefit as to what the purpose of this meeting is. I don't think that was ever clearly laid out. And please interrupt me, existing council members, if you don't agree with this. Carrie, if you have any comment from a legal perspective. But I think it is important to keep in mind why we started this tentative process and figure out what the scope of work is, or what the scope of review is. We had several motions that went to the city council that we did not feel reflected the intent of the Planning Commission in those motions. We therefore said we would like to see these motions as they're going to be presented to the city council so we can review and approve them, because in some cases we do not feel they represented the sentiment of our decision. So I thought that scope of our review was limited to the motions themselves. I did not know that the scope of our review was also on changed language in the actual findings of fact. So that's something we can talk about, the scope of our review. But again, with certain applications, we thought it important to put that tentative in there just so we made sure that it was worded the way we want. I think this particular appeal, given the time we spent on some of these issues, the wording was important to some of our members, and it is important that it's communicated clearly to them. So Carrie, Jeff, if you want to talk to your understanding of the scope of what you have given us and what you're thinking you're reviewing, that would be great. But I came in with the understanding or the thought that we were reviewing the motions. I did not know that we were also looking into the findings of fact and any changes made there.
Yeah, well, my understanding, Clay and Commission, is that this hearing or this meeting is to go through, yes, what findings you would like to adopt. And yes, those motions are included And they're at the bottom of the document in the findings. And, you know, I've highlighted here in the fourth motion, the other thing that I thought that I had heard in your discussion under deliberation that you wanted to emphasize that wasn't included in what I sent out to you, but I thought, well, if they bring it up, I wanted to have the language prepared. I didn't send this highlighted language to you because I thought when we were coming back, we were adopting the findings. And like I said, the traditional way that we've done this, we've never done this actually really tentative language before, except for one other thing, I think, since I've been here. So this is new to us or new to me on how you guys do it here, okay? Or have done it traditionally. So my understanding usually is how we would come back with you and we would have, it would, like I said, we present a proposed findings with our staff report, but you guys also receive as part of your exhibits throughout this meeting or 2 meetings or 3 that you hold on these, you will get proposed findings from the applicant and arguments, from the appellant and arguments from the applicant as well that often include proposed language. And so usually how it's done in most jurisdictions I've worked in one of these where you're adopting findings is you would refer to which during your deliberations, you'll say in Exhibit A3, for instance, the proposed findings from the appellant, we believe this story language, which is the language I include in the highlighted, that would be what you would want to adopt into your findings. So that's how it's traditionally done. I didn't include those because you guys didn't reference those, but I wanted to have, you know, from the tenor of your argument the other night, I wanted to have that prepared and we can go through it and discuss if that reflects your language that you want included in the findings. And just like Commissioner Newton said, yes, we do want to reflect the motions and get those correct as well, but we want to adopt the whole findings tonight. That was my understanding.
Oh, yeah, I didn't come in with the expectation of Jeff, my experience with this is this would be totally appropriate for in a courtroom setting, but this is brand new here. And, you know, I understand now that I think you expected us to edit what you'd put out to reflect what we thought we'd done. But I'm not prepared to review this tonight. And in fact, my opinion is more in line with Clay's, that, you know, the findings of fact, it's kind of, I don't think any one of us is going to agree specifically on why we decided what we did, particularly on that appeal.
I disagree. I think that we can reach a conclusion about what we were intending. Certainly the highlighted language, Jeff, that you provided, taken from the appellant's argument about story and attached versus detached, is appropriate. And I personally would adopt that. What I received in email earlier this week, I thought that was supposed to be the draft findings that we were reviewing. So I'm very glad, very happy to see that wasn't what that was, and that was just the background. So I like the highlighted portion, and you're right, that was, at least for me, my thought process was something like that for the findings. I think I had one very, very minor wording change with regard to the finding of whether it was attached or detached. And I don't know if this is an appropriate time to just read a very small sentence change that I would have made.
Sure,
you can let me know.
I would, yeah, go ahead.
So under, is the garage detached? The paragraph that begins, the applicant has provided an alternative set of plans, Exhibit C5, that paragraph.
Yes.
That's your final paragraph there. I personally would have changed the second to last sentence to read, the Planning Commission accepts the Cannon Beach building official's statement that the garage depicted in Exhibit C5 is attached. I would make that small adjustment on the basis that I'm not sure that all of us were entirely convinced in our own minds that the new alternative, Exhibit C5, is attached because it doesn't share a load-bearing wall. But for the purposes of the motion in this decision, we decided to accept the building official statement. It's a minor detail, but it clarifies, for me at least, our perspective.
And I think that's true because we had no engineer to verify or to explain whether it was a load-bearing wall or not, or no, expert opinion on it. And so I think that the planning commission in this case, some of the planning commissioners decided to agree with the building inspector's assessment and others did not, but the majority did. So, I don't think the planning commission found it was detached or not detached. I think that the majority accepted what the building inspector said.
Okay.
We didn't have
And
any
so-
legal basis to do it. We
So
don't know whether it's a weight-bearing wall or not, because we had no one to ask, no engineer to ask. In my opinion, it wasn't, but in the majority's opinion, it is. So,
And so that is exactly how most of these sessions go in my past. It's so just like Commissioner Moritz would suggest those changes, we would adopt or will amend and adopt that into the findings. And then we would move to any other areas that other people would have other suggestions.
and can we say the majority finds that they relied on the building inspectors?
If the planning commission adopts these findings, it will be by majority. So I don't think we need that additional language.
The thing I'm concerned about is if the appellant decides to take this up further to the council, I want to make sure that there's a real that these are completely accurate and that we're not closing any doors. In other words, the council might disagree with us and say, well, there's no load-bearing wall here. We find that it's not attached. We don't, if they continue to appeal it.
Well, Lisa, one thing it wouldn't address, we wouldn't be addressing in that level of detail, but, the votes are laid out under the motion.
Yeah, that's true.
Unanimous. They could see where people voted if your concern was that they needed, the council might want to see some momentum behind going in another direction.
Well, one of the things that kind of confused me was this is the first time I've heard a load-bearing beam is what counts for an attached garage. It seems to me in the past, we've had discussions where there was a deck or a breezeway that connected the two, even though it wasn't a load-bearing one, and that was counted as an attached garage.
And he, like I said, he agreed with Exhibit C5, which does, like you said, it doesn't share the load-bearing wall as, what we would say is, the garage is directly against, but it had enough structural, connections that it was attached in his reading of it. Because this is, like I said in the previous meeting, it's not a traditional structure. It's up on pilings up above the ground, so you don't have the traditional kind of load-bearing support. It's more of a web type of a system, structural system.
Well, I don't think we decided that it shared a load-bearing wall.
Well, yeah, and you can remove the load-bearing if you want to remove the load-bearing language in there.
Well, I would like to see that deleted because that was not, as I recall it, and I could be wrong, I don't recall that we found that it was attached because it shared a load-bearing wall. We found it attached because there was a breezeway connecting.
Yeah, so you could strike that in that first paragraph, actually, and then just insert what Commissioner Moritz had said, that revised second paragraph.
Wait a minute, now you've lost me there.
So
So basically, we would just make the finding that we are accepting the building official's determination that it is attached. So we are not making a finding sort of on our own that it's attached or detached, but we have decided to accept that determination.
Yeah, I think that would make that.
Makes
That's
sense.
Because, yeah, no load-bearing wall language, because I
Yeah.
don't believe we said anything about that. But before we even do that, I've got to ask you, Jeff, so all of this background, your decision and what you based it on is included? Is that part of the findings? Because you have findings of fact and conclusions, and it starts off with 2 or 3 pages of your finding, the planning department's findings regarding this application. And I'm
Yes,
curious
so-
why is that part of this?
So, traditionally, like the summary and background segment that starts on page 2 gives you the summary of the kind of the history of the building permit or the process or whatever you're working with. Okay, so then we go directly into, on page 3, the arguments, right? Each one that they offered, right? And so the first one's about the building permit violates PUD condition 16. Well, like I said, I've inserted that highlighted area about the number of stories to reflect that story portion. But the other, yes, you keep that first part because that tells you what the condition is and what the argument is over it. Then you talk about the findings or what you guys find upon that. And so traditionally, when you read a staff report, it's often done as proposed findings because you're reading kind of the argument, and then you it gives you something to kind of reflect on, standard by standard as you go through the different criteria. And so then the comprehensive plan, I state the argument from the applicant, that number 2, and then I give the finding from, the staff report, but it also reflects, the discussion. And so then I move on to 3, same thing about the SAMA. And then unless you guys had other adoption, then I move into the motions under the final thing and try to reflect what I heard in the motions. And like I said, I thought you guys might want to talk about on that 4th motion, I've added in the line based on the finding that the comprehensive plan is not a part of the building permit review process per ORS 197-1951, and that the permit itself doesn't violate the comprehensive plan, because I think you guys kind of stressed that. So you might want to add that language as well in that motion.
So could I just clarify before we move on to the comprehensive plan, the document we received under, what was it? Part A, number of stories, looks different than what you are showing us on the screen. So what will go to city council is what is on your screen, not what we received. Because what we
Exactly.
received has like gross floor area, which seems out of place.
Right.
Okay,
So I removed that because you
Okay.
guys, like I said, I
just wanted to clarify which one was going to council. So perfect.
But this is
Yeah.
it's great for a workshop as well. So how you guys know that I work in the future, this is how I prefer to do that. So.
See, and
Yeah.
I would prefer that we got our findings, finding A, finding B, finding C, finding D, our conclusions, A, B, C, D, and that's it. And none of what none of what the planning department, what their conclusions were. I thought this was just the findings and conclusions made in this case regarding the appellate's argument and our decisions regarding it, and not the whole background, I don't understand. I still don't get why that has to be part of this. All of that is on the record. Why is it part of our findings and conclusions? Isn't that what this is? I think of it, it's way too complicated. It's just the A, B, C, D findings, A, B, C, D conclusions. Period. I've just never seen one with all the background, all the evidence that was presented.
Jeff, I think I saw Carrie's hand up. Carrie, did you?
Yeah, go ahead, Carrie.
So the reason why we have findings of fact and conclusions is because this is the written document that you adopt is the thing that will be appealed to the city council and then will be evaluated by the city council and then edited again by the city council. And that is the thing that goes to the Land Use Board of Appeals. So the reason why we have the background facts and the reason why we've identified the documents in the record is so that we are building a foundation for Luba's review. And we have to, as part of this, identify all of the facts that are relevant to the Planning Commission's decision, even if the Planning Commission didn't talk about them. Because there are things that are part of the background here that provide the logic, the train of thought, the explanation necessary for it to make sense. So that's why it has more words in it than just what the Planning Commission said.
Well,
With that in mind, then I would like to see this document before the meeting so that I can look at it and see that I agree with that, because sometimes the sentiment that we'll see in the staff report is not going to be the sentiment that was expressed in the meeting and by the Planning Commission. So, and we can vote on this if we need to, but Jeff, in the future, I would love something that had the highlighted sections.
Yeah.
What was changed from what was originally, sending it to me as it's been changed without some kind of red line.
Yeah,
would be
definitely.
Really
Definitely, Clay. I guess also the component that I want to use this as also though as a work session is, staff wants, we're trying to put together kind of the record is what we're doing. Okay, so I would, now that I know how you guys want to work, because like I said, we haven't done this before, right? So I want to know how.
We have done it before, Jeff.
We did it
one discussion before, the exact same discussion we had.
But we've had that discussion. But once again, I don't think you understood what I was trying to get as a point of workshop. It helps if I want, if, like I said, you have all of this language in highlighted, right? You have it.
Now I do.
No, you have it in, and that's A3 right here. I can show it to you if you'd like. This is the proposed
from the record.
Right, from the record. And so I'm just saying, you don't have to have all that put together, but even if you just say, I find, like when you're having your deliberation, right? This is how it operates. You're deliberating the story idea, right? Well, we find that the appellant's argument on the story is taken from ORS, whatever, or the residential language. We find that compelling. Well, I will bring that back in your tentative findings. But if I don't hear that, if I don't hear you guys reference what you want bringing to me, I have to kind of guess. And, I, from now on, understand, I will just go ahead and guess. I won't bring back, I won't wait for you guys to reference things. Because
I actually, now that I know, I was the one who made those motions, so I will take full responsibility for not citing the findings. I didn't realize I needed to, but I'm happy to do that. I just had no sense that was part of what I should include when I'm bringing a motion for everyone to consider.
Exactly. And I think that's, like I said, yes, we have had this discussion one other time, but we haven't done this very often. And so now it's great for you guys to know that's how I like to work, because that does also help you guys in your deliberations too, I think, to identify where your arguments, you're building your case from, okay? And so, like Carrie said, what we do when we build that staff report, we're trying to build the case for an argument, right? To go forward if it is appealed, or whatever, it goes to land use board. We're trying to bring in the evidence that we have when we made our administrative decision, for this one. And so I give you all the facts of what made that decision. And unless you guys really tell me to bring in others, or you make a different decision, that will be reflected. So know that going into the next findings that you have, because just look at any setback reduction or the normal ones that we don't have these kind of tentative discussions. Just look at those findings. They're the exact staff report. They're just with, minor changes. Okay. And that is really how we go into these, unless we hear persuasive arguments from whichever you want. So from now on, though, I also know how to, I think I know how you guys want them in the future. Instead of giving you these, like you said, Clay, I was not going to show you this document at all unless you guys brought up that, hey, we want that story language in there, because we didn't really come to that. I don't think we came to that decision that you gave us in the findings, because that is truly what you got in the original staff report, right? So I think this is a great work session for that and understanding of that.
Okay, I have a question for Carrie. You said that all the background has to go in with our findings and conclusions in case it were to go up. Doesn't Luba get a complete record? Wouldn't they get the staff report as part of the record if they were reviewing this case? Why does it have to be part of the findings and conclusions? They would get the record anyway.
The reason why, there's two reasons. First of all, because if there's a dispute over what is in the record or not, by listing the exhibits in the decision, that affirms what's in the record or not. The second reason is because decisions have to be based on substantial evidence. That means evidence that a reasonable person would rely on in making a decision. So we have to identify what those facts are that the finding is based on. So we have to have those facts in the decision itself. It's not enough to have it in the record, because what if there was disputed evidence?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I guess what really threw me in this is the findings about the story. I just don't I guess, Jeff, I kind of see what you're saying, but it is the findings as they are now, obviously, and with the highlighted portion, it's a whole different animal than what we were given.
Okay, so it sounds like we're happy with the highlighted portion at least.
I like the change that you suggested.
Thanks.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, he liked the change that Commissioner Moritz suggested as well.
Okay.
But then did we agree we're taking out the first paragraph under is the garage?
I think that was a suggestion. Did you guys come to a consensus on that, or?
Is that something we need to vote on?
Wait a minute. First paragraph, where is it?
So what you guys had, or Commissioner Moritz, or I had suggested, I think, and you guys had kind of thought it might work, is under B, is the garage detached? You would get rid of that first paragraph, but just as condition 16, and just have the second paragraph as amended by Commissioner Moritz.
Can I make a suggestion? Not about processes working fine, but if we're going to go down this path, then we should allow for minority decisions. I mean, what Lisa's saying is, I voted for some of this, but you guys are not beginning to reflect the reasons I did it. And
Doesn't matter because I was in the minority.
well, it does matter. It does matter because
I wish it did, but it
I mean,
Mike, you could write a letter. Mike, you are perfectly able to write a letter to city council, and maybe you and Lisa would consider doing that, explaining why you didn't vote or why you disagree. I mean, that I've seen Lisa's done that before, I believe, right, Lisa?
Here's the thing I'd like to do, Mickey, is say I agree with the main points, the bottom where we dispense with or dispose of the claims. But I want to add another point with respect to the findings of fact that influenced me. Right? I mean, what's wrong with that? I mean, I agree with what they said, but there's other facts that I deem relevant that if I have to stand up and defend this decision, I want them on the record.
Well, maybe this is the time to bring them out and see if anyone else agrees.
No, I don't think so, because I feel like this is being foisted upon us for the first time, except maybe once in the past. And I mean, I will accept the decision of this group, and I don't want to be a negative person coming in and saying, you got to do things my way. But we've gone, what, a long time. In fact, I've sat in 2 meetings and we've disposed of 4 claims, and this is the first time I've seen this. And I thought maybe it was because this was such a complicated case, which it was, and there's a lot of bad blood and a lot of undercurrents and other things, but you know, this doesn't necessarily reflect the deliberations that we had.
In what way, excuse me, in what way do you think it doesn't reflect it?
Because I didn't accept either of the arguments. I was on the garage, whether it was detached. I just figured, you know, the train took off on this one. This is the best situation we'll come up with. So yeah, Mr. Harrison gets a little bit, Mr. Bouvet gives a little bit. It just rounded out the whole damn day, right? Because I felt bad for the guy. And it's a legitimate point to make. We were trapped in a situation where the fucking train left is this going on?
No, you voted for it. So
Yeah.
it was just, I think the only nays were Barb Knopp and myself. So, I mean, and
I voted for it for a different reason.
Yeah, but
Okay, I think we should move on, but I would like to say, I think Carrie already brought this up, but because this is a determination that has to be supported by facts, I don't think that I would be comfortable going on record saying I just was balancing things for the heck of it. I know that I need to have a basis in the code for why I felt that in this case, this was the correct decision. So I would be very uncomfortable to just say, yeah, I'm just.
I have a basis. My basis is I would have rejected both, but the damage was done.
I agree, the damage was done, but we still need facts to support.
And so the parties, Mr. Alterman, I see him pop up, you know, they offered a solution. You know, I couldn't open the record to go back and find out whether Mr. Harrison was happy with that solution, but it seemed to me, you know, I'm approaching this as a settlement. It's a best case. It's a win-win for everybody. And I would challenge you to tell me that doesn't happen in court.
And so
Well, part of that settlement then is some of the language that we don't agree with, right? So
yeah. So
Yes, Clay.
So back to kind of the paragraph 1. I mean, I really think that you don't think, Mike, does the second paragraph, you can't agree with that second paragraph, or?
Yeah, I can agree with, apart from the fact that it doesn't represent everything that went into my thinking on this, I can agree with what you wrote.
Okay.
Right? You know, I hate to hide the fact that, you know, there was an issue whether this was load bearing or not, whether that was the requirement. You know, I'd like to leave that in. It was an open issue. Lisa didn't agree. I know we go with the majority, but, you know, leave it in.
Well, I think it's a really important conversation to have. I think it is one reason we really do need a running start on any changes to the language, because we're all given an equal opportunity to review the language as written. If we have a problem with it, we bring it up when the record is open or when we have our discussion. If there's changes to that, any changes at all, we need to be given a running start to review it. We can discuss it in this forum and then change it as we individually feel.
I certainly know now going forward that this was something that I should have reviewed for edit. I didn't.
Partially true. I didn't review this either. I didn't know to review the staff report. I reviewed the motions. I did not review the staff report. So I think it's as Jeff said, this is probably the second, maybe the third time we've ever done this. So it's on us to go, this is what we want, and move
Okay.
forward.
I give on that. It's what we want. So let's go ahead.
I would move that we remove that first paragraph under B, because I don't think we made a decision about whether it was load bearing or not.
Yes.
Okay.
agreed.
I think that the decision was based on the fact that there was a breezeway, and that was.
So,
for-
yeah, and so Lisa, would you mind motioning or amending your motion to strike B, strike that first paragraph under B and adopt Commissioner Moritz's amended second paragraph? And that gets all of B in that one.
Okay, I make a motion to strike the first paragraph under B and adopt Commissioner Moritz's changed language for the second paragraph under B.
Is there a second? Second?
The second is my,
Okay, any further discussion?
All right. Commissioner Bates?
yes. What?
This is just for that motion. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'll call that the B motion. Okay. Commissioner Bennett's not here. Commissioner Kerr,
Yes,
Commissioner Knopp,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
No,
Chair Johnson.
Yes.
Any other suggestions or?
I just, if you don't mind, Clay, what is your objection, please?
it was a big part of why I made my decision, was the language right there. So I thought it was important.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a dilemma, isn't it?
It really
I thought it
was.
was important too. But can we go move on to point 2? And if we have any other comments, we can come back on this, we can come back. Okay.
Good with that?
Point 2.
Uh-huh.
What are you asking?
Any changes to point 2, building permit violates the Cannon Beach Comprehensive Plan?
Well, Jeff, I feel like that's a question for you. Is there changed language in there from what we initially read? Is there anything highlighted maybe? Or did you highlight anything?
No, the only thing that, is summarized is, and I'll read it, is I didn't highlight it. I didn't insert anything that's not in the, findings that you guys have.
There's just one small typo at the end. I don't know if it matters. We have a such as the this. You might want to just take the out.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Okay.
So do we want to do motions for each of these?
I don't think you need to. It's just that when we amended it all, we would want that in there.
So
Are there any other changes in the staff report we should discuss, Jeff, or could we move to the motions?
Well, I did put down there in the fourth motion, I'd added that language that I think it was Commissioner Kerr had talked about, that and that the permit itself doesn't violate the comprehensive plan. I don't know if you want that in there.
I bet we spent a full 10 minutes on that one point in particular and was a pretty close vote. So I think it is important it's in there.
Okay.
Yeah. And I do have some, unfortunately, edits back up at the top under finding 3. So at some
Sure.
point, it would be nice to go back up and address
Yeah.
that.
I had some other changes too that I saw that
you want
Okay.
it under motions?
under motions, yeah.
Okay, so do you want to just start with 3 there?
Well,
Sure.
could I start to the order of the motions? I don't think this was the order the motions were made. It may not matter, but as I actually went back over the video and the motions were made in another order. Does that matter?
Well,
It doesn't matter, but we can move them, certainly.
Yeah.
The initial motion was the second motion around
Okay.
drywall.
you're making a motion?
No, well,
Oh,
let's
no,
just,
I'm not making a motion at this point, no.
yeah.
Just discussing.
Oh,
So Clay, which one was the second motion then?
That's the drywall. Not being exclusionary.
Right?
So that was the first motion. The second motion was the garage itself being that the garage is attached with the modification as depicted in C5. The third motion was stands. The third motion is correct, and the fourth motion is correct.
Okay, so just first and second gets switched. Okay.
Yeah. Also, on the third motion, Commissioner Kerr voted nay on that. It's listed she voted yay.
Can we look at the third motion, please, Jeff?
Yeah. And so on the third motion, you had Commissioner Kerr voted nay.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Okay, thank you.
But are on the, this is just kind of a question for how this particular motion is going to be interpreted in the future, but wasn't it more appropriate that we simply dismissed his claim? We didn't deny it. I mean, that was the practical impact, but I think that the conclusion of the group was we had no authority to hear it.
I feel like at least when I was making that motion, my sense was that we were denying that point in the appeal.
I don't want anybody to get the idea that we're in the practice of going back and reviewing previous appeals and permits.
Well, by denying the appeal, we are saying that we're not trying to review a previously determined fact. We're just saying we're denying that point of the appeal.
Let's go ahead then.
And I think that, this does go back, I think, to what at the initial, just like Mr. Weisman had said, they can make these claims, they can be as far off as they want, but they can make the claims, but we just have to, approve them or deny them or whatever. So based on.
No, I thought he said we could choose to disregard them if we wanted. So again, this is going to come back and we're going to see it again. How do we want to address this in the future?
Well, we're saying we want to address it that what needs to be addressed as an enforcement issue.
Right.
Right, which is saying we dismiss the claim.
No, we're just
No.
saying it's not, we're just saying that we don't have the power to enforce it as a planning commission as part of this appeal. That the power to enforce it comes from the enforcement wing of the city government.
And what is the difference in your mind between saying, again, this is where I disagree then with how we got to this decision, at least is the way it's been represented.
The difference is that we are saying we don't have the ability to deny a building permit as a basis of enforcement for this previous condition. So we're saying we deny that request in the appeal, period. We don't buy the argument, but the city can enforce in other ways. It just can't be by denying the building permit.
My decision, the reason I voted with the group on this, yay, was because I didn't feel like it was appropriate for us to hear the claim anyway.
And so, Mike, you could, I guess you could have, I don't think you can now, but I think you could have abstained if you didn't feel that you were part of that decision, or you didn't feel you wanted to.
abstain, well, wait a minute. You know, if we're going to have this argument every time over, you know, findings of fact, which we're just instituting, we're not going to get a lot done. Now, if there's a big deal between deny and dismiss, when one reflects what everybody did and one reflects what some people did, let's go with dismiss. We need to get on the record that it is not appropriate to bring these kind of claims up.
No, we don't. It's appropriate to bring up any claim you want. You have a right to bring up any claim you want.
No, you have to file your appeal within 2 weeks of the permit,
Okay.
not
We don't
5
have a
years.
right to tell people whether they have a right to bring up a claim. They can claim that because the bridge wasn't built of cheese, it's illegal, and they have a right to bring that up.
Within the procedures that are set forth in the code, Lisa. This.
You
is
raised a
outside the-
colorable argument why it was still an active requirement, that he was not, he made a colorable argument as to why this was a current issue, and we decided to deny it, but he's allowed to raise that argument.
You know, Clay read the decision of Luba. There was no colorable argument there. This
Yeah, but he did.
argument was decided by Luba.
No, that's
Not specifically, I mean,
That's
implied,
your
but not specifically.
interpretation, Mike. That my interpretation of the Luba decision was that it didn't really apply to this living wall. So that's a whole, you know, and I am capable of making that decision, you know, coming to that conclusion too. I'm not just doing it randomly. I read through the decision carefully, and that's what I thought. Other people didn't think that. So that's fine. And the attorney for the Harrisons is a really competent attorney. And he also felt it was an argument that was worth making. It didn't work.
And he's made it, and some of us denied it, and some
Right.
of us dismissed it.
I
So-
didn't dismiss it, I'll say that.
Yeah, I would never consider dismissing it.
Go ahead, Mickey, did you want to say, or Carrie, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to say that this is not the opportunity to revisit the substance of these motions. I think that if folks feel that they don't reflect what the motion said, then we can go back and listen to the tape. But the motion was the motion, and it got the vote that it got. So I think that that's what we need to be focused on here, and not going back and reanalyzing the arguments that were presented.
Yeah, but I think Mike he's new to the planning commission. He's just trying to understand what these.
No, thank you, Lisa, but it's not that. Go to the motion on the driveway. The guy had no standing to bring that claim. He had none. I didn't
Well, you're not
decide it.
judge and jury. You know, some people thought he did. So, you know, his attorney thought he did. So that's not for us.
No, his attorney didn't say that. Mr. Harrison said he was just making a point.
I think this
Shall
is a
we
great
move
topic
on?
for a work session.
Yeah,
I think
let's-
also, Carrie, we've talked about having some reviewing our training. I'd be curious how this was addressed from a legal perspective. You know, right now we're just going off past practice. But I would be curious to dive a little deeper on this in a work session.
Okay,
So I would suggest, Chair, that all the motions that were made, Clay, I think you made the kind of the discussion on these items in the motion. If you want to just make a motion, or someone make a motion on to accept those changes that Clay has presented.
Oh, you mean the order of things?
Yeah, the reorder to then put you as a under the third one as a nay, and then also to if you guys want to accept that highlighted section in 4 about the permit itself doesn't violate the canopy. Those could all be included in this under the motion.
I'm sorry, the highlighted portion in 4.
Yeah. Here that says, and that the permit itself doesn't violate the comprehensive plan.
I would change that language. I'll propose this. We can talk about it. I feel like the intent of that conversation I changed that language to read, based on the findings that the comprehensive plan should not be considered as a part of this application. Obviously it doesn't violate I shouldn't say obviously. I just think that I wrote that down after listening to the conversation again. We spent quite a bit of time on that. And I felt like that language that I just read
Okay.
encapsulated that.
Does that reflect the intent?
Well, I guess that we can put that out to my fellow commissioners. If Lisa, you felt pretty strongly on this. Does that revise language?
I don't think whether it violates the comprehensive, it's whether the ordinances violate the comprehensive plan. That's another discussion, and that's not part of this discussion. That's part of the code audit.
And that's why I said it shouldn't be considered as a part of this application or this permit, we could say.
But I don't think that anyone decided whether or not those particular code portions are copacetic with the comprehensive plan or not. And that wasn't even the discussion. That's not even part of the discussion. So to say that the permit itself does not violate the comprehensive plan, I think the intent of that sentence bothers me a lot. I don't think that's exactly what we meant. I think what we meant was, at least I think what we meant was that whether or not it violates the comprehensive plan is not even a consideration in discussing whether to approve the building permit.
And I think that's what Clay was getting at with his edit. Do you accept that language that Clay just
Could
presented?
you read it again, Clay?
Sure. I'll start here. Based on the finding that the comprehensive plan should not be considered as a part of this application. You want me to read the whole sentence? That might not.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Figure out where I'm at here. I'll just read the whole motion. Having considered the evidence in the record, upon a motion by Commissioner Bates and seconded by Commissioner Newton to deny the Hathaway application on behalf of Jeff and Jennifer Harrison for the appeal of administrative decision, the Planning Commission I think we should take out the word unanimously. We can say the Planning Commission approved building permit, blah, blah, application, blah, blah, based on the finding that the comprehensive plan should not be considered as a part of this application, as a part of this permit.
That's good. I like it's a part of this permit.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, that's really good.
Okay, so is there a second on that?
Can I ask one more thing?
Yeah.
When you read it, you left off the word tentatively. You didn't.
Oh, that should be another part of a motion, maybe a more broad motion, that in all four motions, the word tentatively be removed.
Yeah, that'd be part of it. Thanks, Clay.
Oh, and the last, I don't know how many words, but starting with and request the staff to draft findings for review, we would delete that last part of the sentence.
Well, yeah. I'll clean that up to what the final motion is. So okay, so and so did Clay make the motion there? Or did
Well, I'm trying to figure that out.
I think that was kind of a limp and long motion if it was.
Okay.
All right,
And
let's see if this is a motion. See if you all think this is a motion. To remove the word tentatively from all four motions, to remove the part in the last sentence, the language in the last sentence of each of the four motions that requests the staff to draft the findings, to move Commissioner Kerr's name from a yay to a nay in the third motion, and to change the language in the last sentence to read based on the findings that the commission, and strike the rest of that sentence to read should not be considered as a part of this permit.
And then the unanimously be crossed out.
I missed that. The word unanimously be removed from all but the
one that it applies to.
second, all but the second.
The new first.
The new first, thank you.
Right.
And the order?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, yes. And the order be moved so that the second motion is the first and the first motion is the second. The third motion and the fourth motion remain.
I second.
Okay. Any-
Okay,
we have that.
so Commissioner Bates,
Yeah, yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes,
Commissioner Knopf,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes,
Commissioner Newton,
Yes,
Chair Johnson.
Yes.
All right, great. Thank you all.
Okay.
Okay, so
Jeff,
what?
can we have some kind of a discussion, something at some point on some of the things that were brought up tonight, just because
Wait,
then we don't have to go through
wait,
this.
Commissioner Kerr, we still have, I think Commissioner Moritz had said she had a couple things and a couple other amendments. Is that
Oh.
correct?
yeah, I'm sorry, we're gonna, to drag you through this, but I felt like there were a number of changes to point 3. To fill out our discussion, because we did spend a fair amount of time on the living wall discussion. So I had a number of points that I would suggest including in the findings. Sorry to prolong things, but I think it's important that for the purposes of the living wall, when we suggest enforcement, we show why.
Okay, that's great.
Okay,
So sorry, but here we go. There's
Hey.
one minor typo. Just to point it out, in short, that condition required, the line below that should also be required, not requires.
okay, required, okay.
Okay, I would say in the paragraph that begins, in this case, it is not disputed.
Jeff, would you take the screen to that?
Yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, right here. In
Right,
this-
exactly. Second line down with the sentence that begins, the appellants. I actually would have changed that to read, the appellants are seeking to enforce provisions of that SAMA that go beyond the requirements of the condition of approval number 2. Take out the next sentence where it says that is not the planning commission's role and it should reject this basis for the appeal. I would completely remove that sentence.
I disagree.
Well, I don't agree that this statement is correct. So that's why I would, for myself, I would not make a blanket statement about our role or not at this point.
We've been talking about this for a long time, Mickey, so I disagree.
Well, we could put it to a vote.
Yeah, that's,
Okay,
I need to look. Well,
So, so do we need to have this motion read again or?
can't we just put, is it possible to have a couple motions?
Is that Clay?
Yeah,
Yeah, that's clear.
Clay, I'm finding it difficult to hear you. I'm not sure where you are from your speaker, but it comes, it's not coming through very clear.
Is this any better?
Maybe a little better.
Who else is in the room? Is it the distance from the microphone?
I assume, I'm not sure. Anyways,
I'll try to speak up.
okay.
So the first sentence that Commissioner Moritz suggested, is everyone okay with that edit?
I struggle with editing these may
Verbally.
be great changes. I'm struggling with editing your report at this point. I did not know, I did not walk into this meeting thinking we were editing.
If I could share my screen, I have
Okay,
edited on my screen, and maybe if I can share that, then people can read the suggested language. Would that help, Clay?
That would help, yeah.
Okay, so let me know when I'm able to share my screen.
okay, let me, okay,
So I think you'll need to stop screen sharing so that I can start it.
oh, that is true. Okay, there you go, thanks.
Okay,
See if that works now.
yep. So here we are with the paragraph that begins in this case. I am suggesting we change the second sentence beginning here. And I would just say the appellants are seeking to enforce provisions of that SAMA that go beyond the requirements of the condition of approval number 2. And then I would remove a sentence that says that is not the planning commission's role and it should reject this basis for appeal.
I totally agree with that.
Applicants are seeking to enforce the requirements of the SAMA. So Jeff, this is an interpretation thing, in my opinion. You interpreted what they were doing as not looking to enforce the SAMA. We are then coming back and saying they are looking to seek. They are seeking to enforce the SAMA.
That's a good point, Clay.
So Jeff, this is 180 degrees from what you've written.
And so does it reflect what you guys discussed, though? That's what's key, okay?
I think
I
we're
don't know
not,
what I can say that.
well, that was the big argument. We weren't trying to enforce this, and that's what Luba said, we could not, that, that was beyond what we could do. We were asking that the conditions of approval, that's what we were discussing. And I think that this reflects that. It's the conditions of approval that were the issue, which is a separate thing just from the SAMA.
Carrie, I have a question for you. We are editing a document that is a part of the record that was presented to all the parties. And I can see making changes to this to reflect our sentiment if we've put forward something that is different than we feel was reflected in our deliberations. The Harrisons in this case.
I'm sorry, are you there?
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
My question is, we're talking about
Hello?
changing.
Yes.
Oh, I don't think she can hear us. Carrie, can you hear us? I don't think she hears us.
Okay, I heard just the end of that. I apologize. I mean, just the beginning of that. And the question was, to what extent can you alter the staff findings at this point?
Yes.
So the planning commission's charge at this point is to determine whether or not what is written here reflects what the nature of your deliberation. We need to make it match your interpretation of the requirements to reach a conclusion.
Well, when
Is that responsive?
when I made my conclusion, it was based on our staff report that had an opinion that is 180 degrees, that is entirely different than we are proposing to change it to. So
As did I.
So I'm concerned about moving too much in the staff report. That was our baseline for decision. If our staff tells us they think that the appellants are seeking to enforce something, and then we turn around and we change that.
So-
I don't know where to stop on that.
You are the decision maker here. So you are not married to what's in the staff report. You evaluated the appellants and the applicant's positions and made a decision with respect to the SAMA. And my interpretation of that was that it was that the SAMA was beyond review. It wasn't germane to an approval criterion of this application. So I thought that was consistent with what the staff had here, but I see that that's not what Commissioner Moritz has. So I think that I had it wrong, apparently. The only thing I can offer is that we go back and look at the minutes from the hearing.
No, I don't know that you had it wrong. The language that is not redlined was what we reviewed. I probably agree with Anna on this. I just have a real hard time changing a staff report that dramatic.
But this is our finding. This is not, this is what we based our decision on.
Is anyone else getting echoes?
Yeah,
I know we're getting echoes everywhere.
Someone turned on a phone somewhere.
No, Clay, what you say is being repeated after you've said it.
Yeah,
That's how
the reason it's being repeated is someone has two sources.
Yeah.
And Gary, it might be you, because whatever you did, just shut it off.
yeah.
This paragraph, Clay, we're not taking what Jeff says and changing what Jeff says for the record. We're talking about what we saw that the appellants were saying in their appeal, how we understood their appeal. And I think that it is the way it is written is not correct, but Commissioner Moritz's additions are what we discussed and do reflect what we discussed and do reflect what the issue raised by appellant was.
I'm okay. If Carrie, you're okay with it, I'm okay. I think they're good changes. I was just procedurally concerned.
Yeah, no,
Carrie, you're not concerned, I'll drop it.
yeah, procedurally, there's no issues, Clay. I mean, traditionally, this is what happens. I will present findings and you guys amend them to more what you think reflects what you came to consensus. So does this look
It's fine with me.
okay?
Which the second sentence or the second and the third, please? The second sentence is okay. The third is not. The removal of the third.
Why would you want for us to find as the planning commission that it is not our role and should reject for that basis? I'm uncomfortable saying that.
Where does it say our role is that? I mean, I thought we were a body of limited powers. Where does it say that we have that role?
Well,
I don't know what you're asking. What do you mean? It doesn't need to say it anywhere.
It does. That was in the report. That's the reason I made the decision I made. Let's leave it in. It's in the findings of fact. It's not in the summary. It's not in the motion.
I'm
no,
sorry.
I can't accept that. I can't. I would never accept that as a finding. That
I'm not willing to compromise on this. Let's vote. I think it's
Okay, let's vote.
absolutely absurd that you would deny somebody the right to include in the report something that he relied upon to make a decision. But go ahead. Let's have a majority vote on this.
So let's if that's the issue, is that one sentence, let's go ahead and just vote on that one and then we'll, okay.
I'm not ready to vote on that. I got to understand what's going on with that more. I got to read it again.
So, is somebody making a motion?
Would you like me to officially make the motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I move to strike the sentence. That is not the planning commission's role, and it should reject this basis for appeal from the paragraph that begins in this case on page 6 of the proposed findings.
I second that motion.
Any further discussion? Okay,
One question, yeah, are you asking for, Jeff, what is your belief? You're a man who's been out in many communities. What is your opinion on this piece? Is it appropriate for the planning commission to reject an appeal based upon an independent and unrelated nonconformance?
I don't think it's Jeff's role to
No.
weigh in on this.
I would like to know what practices, please.
Well, I can answer questions, and it was a question, yes, both I and Bill wrote that sentence, so we wouldn't have written that sentence unless we felt that sentence is correct.
okay, we have a motion and a second. Want to call the roll?
Yes, Commissioner Bates,
No.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Knopf,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
No,
and Chair Johnson.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. So next up, Commissioner Moritz, you want to summarize any of the others or?
Sure. So basically, in the final paragraph, I've expanded it to differentiate between the dry well issue and the living wall issue, both of which came up under the SAMA. So I don't think I need to read all of the language here, but I added language distinguishing those two issues. And then at the end, I talked a little bit more about why the city is able to enforce the living wall maintenance requirement in the SAMA. And this is for city council's benefit. So rather than just simply saying, we're going to draft a letter asking for enforcement, I wanted to have in our findings why we felt that it was appropriate for the city to enforce. And as Clay had mentioned, he said, hey, can the city take remedial action if the property owners don't take action? And so I included that here as part of our findings. And I can read this into the record if need be, but I'll let you all just read this yourselves for now.
could you move your, oh, never mind, I got it.
So are you making a motion in this language or?
I'm happy to make the motion for this change of language, but I don't know if we want to have a discussion first.
I thought we've already discussed it.
I just need a minute to read it.
We discussed it for months.
Yeah. So yeah, what, Anna, do you want to read your motion on
Sure.
this? Okay.
Sure.
All right.
It may be easiest if I just read this entire paragraph. It will take a while, but then it gets all into the record
Right.
clearly.
Yeah, yes.
All right. So I am going to make a motion that we modify the final paragraph of the findings to read. There were two arguments advanced by the appellants and related to the SAMA. One is that the proposed dry well violates the SAMA because it is not one of the common uses permitted by the SAMA. The Planning Commission finds that the city must deny the appeal based on the fact that the dry well is not exclusionary as the applicant's evidence provides. The second issue is the failure of the property owners to properly maintain the living wall. The record for the approval hearings, this should read of the PUD, Exhibit A-7, indicates that this wall was to be entirely covered in vegetation such that no concrete was visible. In addition, a number of neighbors have indicated that they find the wall in its current condition to be a blight. The Planning Commission finds that the city may take enforcement action under the SAMA and condition of approval number 17, which does not extend to allowing it to refuse to issue a building permit that otherwise meets the requirements of its code and the PUD, and conditions this denial on the drafting of a letter to City Council on behalf of the Planning Commission seeking enforcement of the SAMA to which the city is a benefited party, requiring maintenance of wall vegetation. If the collective property owners do not take substantive remedial action after adequate notice, the planning commission requests the city to perform the necessary maintenance and bill the property owners for all costs.
Okay,
I think it's well written.
I had just one question. Did we have anybody put into evidence that other people found the wall of light? I don't recall it.
Diane Amos has a letter, and I believe Daryl Kluge also in his letter indicated that one of their issues is the wall.
Okay.
And
Okay.
it's really well written, Mickey. Thank you for that. That's great.
yeah, okay, so is there a second on this?
A
I
second.
second. I beat you, Lisa.
Okay, you win.
Okay,
Okay, Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Knopf,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
and Chair Johnson.
yes.
You guys, that was unanimous. I just want you guys to know. Okay, any others? Commissioner Moritz, while you have the screen?
That is it, finally.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and stop sharing.
Okay.
That was great. Thank you.
Okay. So those are all that's it for,
Well, let me ask if there's any others.
Nothing relative to the motion or the report or your findings, but I did have a couple things that, maybe we put an asterisk next to, and in this work session we're talking about, we come back to. Jeff, in your email to all of us, you mentioned we needed to be careful not to reply all, so we were not violating any open meeting laws. I think that should be described again to the group. We're asked if we've had ex parte contact or any conflict of interest. I was surprised by the definition, the broad definition of conflict of interest. I don't think it would hurt to have another session, work session, talking about what it means to have ex parte contact or what a conflict of interest is for our new members.
So you're talking about in a training session.
Yeah,
Those
or
are
even a
two
work session. Maybe
topics.
we could piece these in,
Okay.
but
And a discussion on what our role is, if that's necessary, because so we don't end up at each one of these meetings to get into, discussion of whether or not we have the right to listen to someone's appeal, or whether they have a right to make the appeal, or where those lines are drawn. I think that'd be a real interesting, informative topic.
Yeah. Okay.
so I'm,
So before we get into any more of this kind of discussion, I would say that we make a motion to adopt the findings, because we haven't made the formal one to adopt the whole thing.
With the revision.
Yes, with the revisions it's suggested. The multiple revisions. Okay.
well, okay, did you hear all of that?
Yes.
So we need a motion to approve all of these items.
I make a motion to approve all of the items we've approved tonight
And adopt the findings, yeah.
and adopt the findings.
Yeah. Okay.
I second.
All right.
All right, Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr. Oh, wait a second. Here we go. I have to, Commissioner Kerr?
Mute. Yes, my dog is squeaking his toy. I'm trying.
Okay. Commissioner Knopf,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
Yes.
and Chair Johnson.
Yes. So I just want to mention that I'm hoping, because it's very confusing running these meetings with a screen up there that I can't really see and print that I can't really see. So I'm hoping on our next meeting that you can come here to City Hall, because it's really distracting to try and conduct these meetings when different people are speaking up. And I just happened to get my second booster shot today, which is great. But anyways, it's really difficult to run these meetings with this kind of setup. So I'm encouraging you to come back in person if possible.
I would agree with that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. I need a motion for the chair to sign the appropriate orders.
I so move.
Second,
Call a roll.
Commissioner Bates,
Yes.
Commissioner Kerr,
Yes.
Commissioner Knopf,
Yes.
Commissioner Moritz,
Yes.
Commissioner Newton,
yes.
and Chair Johnson.
Yes. All right. So
And so we have, we have a couple joint sessions coming up and we will definitely, I don't know if we'll include kind of procedural stuff. I know we have some procedural matters to go over in the code audit stuff, but I think we'll do this as a kind of a separate work session. And so we'll be in touch with Carrie because I think Carrie did our last one, in fact. So thanks, Carrie, for being on the call tonight as well.
Gary.
Oh, Jeff, I've sent out to the code audit group, I've sent out just some things I thought were interesting or relevant. Is that okay to do?
So here, yeah, that's a great question. I ran that by Bill. And so here's Bill's 2 cents, and I guess Gary can also weigh in, but he would prefer that we have, we can post materials and forum. If we want to have a forum where people comment on these things, that would be broadly open to the public or whoever, because if we were to say only planning commission can discuss this, he's afraid that's getting into a non-open meeting type of arrangement. So Bill, but feel free to send me information if you want posted onto a code audit forum site, and we'll post that on our website.
So if I find an article about, housing caps, send it to you, not to the group.
Yeah, send it to me. I post it, and then you guys can see the updates. I'll put out a notice that new materials are available, and we'll keep that running. And then I think because I've run this also by the consulting group, and so I think they're going to bring it up at this next joint session to ask if you guys want more than just the posting. So if you wanted a forum type of thing for the community or whatever, they're going to address that at the next meeting.
Okay, great.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up, Lisa.
Okay. Well, shall we adjourn?
It wasn't easy. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
I'll see you at the next meeting. Sure.